Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Music Junkie podcast. So, today I'm joined by a very delightful and awesome composer slash singer songwriter from Romania. She has written music for many production labels such as Minim, The Library of the Human Soul, Silver Screen, and many others. And later on, we're going to be talking about her producing her own solo material and how she got some of her violin skills used within the Capture trailer that was commissioned on the BBC. So, without further ado, please welcome my guest today, Mirela Nita. Mirela, how are you today?
Hello, Kyle. I'm good, thank you.
Good, excellent. Thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. So just to kick things off, like the first question I always ask anybody on the show is like to start from the very beginning. So could you maybe talk a little bit about like your background in music? Like when did music start for you? Like when did you start becoming interested in it and wanting to do composing work? Is there a specific time you remember wanting to take it seriously? What was that time for you?
Oh, I've had a crazy journey. I didn't know I always wanted to be a composer. I started out as a violinist when I was 7 years old, and I thought that's what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life, to be honest. And then in high school, I dropped violin and pursued music education.
Hmm.
I was preparing to become a music teacher. And so I've learned everything about music theory, harmony, counterpoint, and all that mad stuff. And then in my last year of high school, I watched Gladiator,
Hmm.
and I really loved the battle scene, the score behind it.
Oh yeah.
That's what marked me. And I didn't know about the concept of film scoring back then. Like I didn't even know it had a name. I just loved the music I heard, and I was like, I don't know what that is, but that's what I want to do. So
Great.
that's how it started. I just started doing all sorts of research, and I
Yeah.
ended up here.
Excellent. Well, I think that's the most case for, I think if you ask a lot of composers, like how it started for them, I think like Gladiator is another example, or Star Wars, or these very iconic, like sounding movies, like you hear it and you just immediately think, yes, I want to do that. Like, I don't know what it is, but I want to do that. So it has.
Yeah, I mean, it was very impactful for me because I come from the classical background and I love symphonic music, and
Mm,
that was heavily symphonic, you know.
mm,
So I was like, oh, this is gorgeous. This is something else. It took it to another level because it also had visuals on it on top
yes.
of
Yeah.
it, you know. So I was like, okay, cool.
Ah, fantastic, cool. So you touched upon like gladiators. So obviously Hans Zimmer is one of them. Like, what would you say are? It doesn't have to necessarily be composers. It can be artists, singers, many other different things. What would you say are like the artists or composers that really changed your life? Like the first time you heard their music and you thought, "Wow, I've never heard something like that before." Like, do you have any other
Ooh,
examples?
yes, I have quite a few actually
Hmm.
because they all impacted me and influenced me at a different level. Um, I started out with Michael Jackson,
Okay, sure.
like every kid.
Yeah.
Then Richard Wagner.
Hmm.
I really loved his music and drama, and I guess you could say I kind of identified with him,
Hmm.
artistically speaking. And yeah, Hans Zimmer and Christopher Young. I think Christopher Young was the last one that impacted me and changed my life completely
Yeah.
because look, I've known the man for his score, for his horror scores.
Mm.
I grew up with horror movies. I love horror movies, and ever since I was a kid, I was watching lots of horror movies that he scored. I didn't know that back then, but indirectly, he was obviously an influence. And then I found out that he wrote the score for the shipping news, which is, if you listen to it, it's Celtic.
Mm.
I was like, oh, wait, so he's writing horror, but then Celtic? And I
Mm.
love Celtic music as well. And then I watched Sweet November, which is one of my favorite movies. And I was obsessed with this last piece, this last scene. And it's the track is called Life's Miracle.
Mm.
And I didn't know who wrote it. And I tried to look it up for like 4 years after I finished seeing the movie. And it finally, I found in a comment on YouTube that it was scored by him. And I was like, what? That's no, like, it's impossible. Come on, he's writing horror
Yeah,
scores.
yeah.
Uh, that's when I realized this is the kind of composer I want to become.
Mm.
I love diversity. And I was like, I want to be able to write in many different genres and styles.
Mm.
So for me, that was the ultimate. It's what shaped me as a
Yeah,
composer. Until
yeah.
then, I was kind of like neither here or there.
Right, right.
And that was the ultimate moment.
Mm. Excellent, very cool. Yeah, well, Christopher Young is a very iconic composer. He's done so many great stuff. I think, like the Spider-Man 3 he scored, which I remember like having quite a big impact on me when I was into superhero movies. So yeah, he's one of the best for sure. I think for me, like as far as like you're saying about composers that really changed like your life, for me it has to be probably Harry Gregson Williams, and specifically the score he did for, I think, was it Kingdom of Heaven. I remember listening to that very specifically and thinking like, wow, what is this? Like I've never, like it was so like big and so grandiose with such like had such soaring melodies and themes, and I thought, wow, this is really cool. And then listened to some of his other stuff like Unstoppable and stuff, and it's like, oh, these are electronic scores. So like I was like, oh, composers don't have to be orchestral, they can be like electronic as well. And I loved that he had such musical diversity, and like he could jump into many different genres, and I thought, oh, that's like really amazing. And he has like this signature, he doesn't use it so much now I don't think, but like his signature kind of sound was like he used to reverse stuff a lot within his music, like having pianos reversed, like creating this like kind of like rise effect. And I remember hearing that and I was like, oh, that is cool, I want to learn how to do that. So that's when I became like interested in music production and stuff. But yeah, cool. So Christopher Young, definitely a really good example. These days, like you've talked about like people have changed your life, what kind of artists or composers are you listening to at the moment? Is there anyone specifically on your radar that you're really like really into at the moment?
Well, I've been obsessively listening to Chris Botti
Mm, okay.
and Joe Blankenberg, and it's been going for years.
Mm,
So it's not really at the moment, but it's constantly.
yeah, yeah. There, that's okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
the others are kind of depending on my mood and style. So
sure,
it's
sure,
always
sure.
changing, but these ones are constantly there.
Mm, right, right, right. That's cool. Excellent. So, like, so obviously we touched about on the beginning, like you've written for like a few like production labels such as like the Library of the Human Soul, which people can find like your music on maybe Spotify, YouTube, and stuff. So I wanted to basically kind of just pick your brain and talk about like composition. So when you start to sit down, and you think, okay, I need to write something here for this brief, or maybe just for yourself. What is your starting point? Do you start with like a melody you hear in your head, or do you sit down on your laptop and just like kind of experiment for a few hours? What's like your starting point, would you say?
Well, with Library of Human Soul, it was very easy for me because it relied a lot on emotion. And that's kind of what I'm into. Like, I always start from the emotional background. I have to express something. And yeah, for them, I had to write tracks based on one word, which
Right. Okay.
express an emotion or something. Or So yeah, I was like, okay, so you have, I think my first track for them was called Excellence.
Hmm.
So I had to write music that inspired excellence, right? So I was like, okay, it has to be something positive, it has to be uplifting, it has to, you think of prizes and pride and all that stuff. So
Mm.
started making notes and tried to gather um, inspiring things
Mm.
that could trigger those emotions.
Yeah,
And then,
yeah.
yeah, it just kind of shot out of me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so sounds and like melodies that you would associate with the word excellence, right?
Yes,
Okay, great.
yes.
And that's very interesting, like having only just one word to go on, like from writing something like that. And that must have been quite challenging with just having only that to go on.
Yes, but that's what I loved about it. I love the concept
Mm,
and I love challenges and
great.
I don't like I'm used to not having things easy, so
Mm,
it's actually more motivating when things are a little difficult or weird or,
mm,
extreme.
yeah. That's great, excellent. And have you faced any when you've been written, you've written music for these libraries and stuff? Have there been any like challenges or obstacles you faced when writing music? Maybe it's writer's block, or maybe just you're not understanding what they are maybe asking you. What kind of challenges would you say you faced when writing music?
Well, coming from the classical background, obviously I wasn't aware of the production side of things. So I think that was by far the most challenging thing for me. And until
Mm,
this day, it's still something I'm struggling with. I mean, I'm learning and I got better at it over the years, but it's still something that kind of scares me.
sure.
And the writer's block, yeah, I mean, come on, it's a given. Everybody has it, every creative, I think.
Mm,
Um, it was at times it was very difficult to get out of it. Like I've had periods where it lasted for months,
yeah. Yeah.
so it can be very scary.
Yes. Sure. Sure. Yeah, and I suppose like especially if you get into that rhythm as well, it's like you said, it's very hard to pull yourself out of sometimes. So you have to try and find different ways of kind of getting it under your fingernails and trying to tackle it from a different perspective. So that's very interesting to hear. So moving on from that, obviously you've got background in music, so you know theory and stuff like that. Um, One thing I find always interesting is like having that background with musical theory, having the knowledge, so that if you hit like a roadblock or something, you can rely on that to kind of think, well, I just need to apply this and this will help. But I was kind of interested, like at the same time,
That
having that knowledge, does it like become like even having that knowledge itself become a bit of a roadblock sometimes? Like sometimes it's better to maybe go by your feeling rather than relying on the knowledge you have. Like what would you say like is better, if there is a better way of doing it, or maybe sometimes it's just better to kind of do something in between?
Yes, I think it's better to have a little bit of both.
Mm,
Um, to be honest, having the knowledge for me sometimes was very limiting and counterproductive. And I had to learn to let go of that knowledge and tune in more into my feelings or my gut instincts, as a creative. So, yeah, I think indeed sometimes it helps. It's definitely good to have at least the basic information about music theory and all that, but I don't think I've seen a lot of composers who don't have that and they're
mm,
still doing a great job. So it's definitely possible
yeah.
to do it
Mm, mm.
regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
I mean,
like
I think it depends on what you're trying to achieve. Like if you want to be a music teacher, obviously the information will help you more. But as a as a composer, I don't think there are many occasions where people are asking you about how did you get to that point? Like, how did you do that? Or why did you do that?
mm,
And most of the times you can't even explain it. Like, I have moments when I listen back to some of the tracks and I'm like, why did I do it like that?
Mm.
Like I
Sure,
don't
sure.
even remember doing it. It's so strange. It's like you tune out of your own body and you don't remember how you
Mm.
did things. You just hear that you did it and that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, exactly. I think when you're in the process of writing something, you're just so kind of like almost laser focused on what you're doing that you once time has passed, it's like you do forget how you wrote it. Like when you listen back to old tracks and you listen to them and you think like, oh, I really like how I put that together. How did I do that kind of thing? It's a very weird sensation in that regard. Um, but yeah, like I think like you're right. I think at the end of the day, what's important is that how it makes people feel, especially if you're a film composer or even a video game composer. At the end of the day, like it's what how it makes the player or the audience feel. Like that's the important thing. Whether it's a very complex piece of music or is it's just like drones with like a few simple piano chords, if it like gives that emotion or gives that feeling, that's what's important. Like whether it was a complex piece or not is very subjective. So like if it attains that feeling that is right for that visual medium, then that's the most important thing
Exactly.
for sure.
Yeah, plus, when you're writing, you don't think in terms of, oh, I'm making a key change now. And, like, personally, I don't do that. Like, it
Mm.
just happens. I just go with the flow and whatever it leads me, that's where it is. But I don't think in theoretical terms anymore.
Yeah,
So,
for sure, for sure. Excellent. So yeah, like one thing I was kind of curious to know, like, so if you had the choice of like writing like anything you wanted, like, so like what specific genres do you feel comfortable writing? Is there like a style of music that you gravitate more to than others, or is anything like you're happy to experiment and try anything?
yes. Yes to the experiment.
Mm,
Yes, I don't know. For me, like I said, it's about diversity. So
mm,
I don't think I have yet a niche or
mm,
something. Um, Plus, I love to go from one thing to another, and I need that because if I get stuck in let's say I'm scoring a horror film
mm.
and I hit a block and I don't know what else to do anymore. But to keep myself productive, I would move on to another project which is completely different. Like I have to write, I don't know, a drama song,
Sure.
a dramatic song. So I love to have that, to be able to go from one thing to another and still be productive. I need to feel productive, and having things like that helps me, you know, keep things rolling.
Sure, sure.
And it also for me it's about phases. Like right now I'm in a phase where I write more organic stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I do more recordings for my tracks and the tracks I write for others.
Mm.
So right now I'm in organic and minimalist stage.
Right.
And that's what I do these days.
Excellent. Cool.
But yeah, horror drama, I love that sort of stuff.
Mm.
Actually, I struggle with comedies, like anything.
Comedy. Yeah.
Yeah, like anything happy, cheerful. I find it very difficult to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But even like I said, I love challenges. So I've actually done a short film,
Mm.
a comedy.
Great. Excellent.
Yeah, I can do it.
That's great. And you've recognized that's like you said that you've recognized that's not necessarily a strong point, but like you've learned something from it and you've actually come out the other side, which is really awesome. I mean, I can relate to that a lot, and I don't know if it's all the same for other composers or it's just maybe us, but I find it very challenging to write uplifting, like upbeat music. It's really difficult. Like I'm working on some like positive upbeat tracks at the moment, and every time I'm trying to take it to the next part, I hit a wall. Like it's but like horror, hybrid orchestral stuff like that is genres that I'm quite comfortable in. But when it comes to like very upbeat, like uplifting, kind of like corporate kind of stuff. Like it's really challenging to channel positive vibes. It's very weird.
It is, like I remember at some point my dad listened to my music, and after a few tracks he stopped and looked at me and he was like, "What is wrong with you?" I was like, "What do you mean? Like, why are you so sad?" I was like, "I'm not sad. Look at me. I'm super cheerful." Yeah, but your music is so sad. Are you suffering? I'm like, "No, but it's easy. For some reason, it's easier to write in that
Yeah,
way. I don't know."
yeah. It's I don't know what it is, but yeah, like if you're, I suppose if you're so ingrained in a specific style that you just naturally have like a lot of like affirmation for, then I suppose by default you're gonna feel very comfortable in those genres. But when you're, like you said, when you're being asked to do something that's not something that you would normally do, like that presents a lot of really like fascinating challenges. And how you go about overcoming like those challenges like you did with your short film is like, it's a very scary and daunting, but once you do
Oh yeah.
do it and you come out the other side, you really feel like you've achieved something and you've learned something really do. And you can apply that to like your own work. Like maybe it's just the way you arrange things, or maybe the way you choose your instruments. Like that's the great thing. Like every genre has something new you can learn from it, whether it's very small or very big.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I suppose in that case, like I wanted to bring onto the subject. So of course you've worked with the Library of the Human Soul and a few other like publishers and stuff. Like how did you go about like making those connections? Were they people you just met on Facebook? Did they contact you? How did you get in contact with them?
Um, the Library of Filmso was the first publisher for me.
Hmm.
I'm very grateful. Dad, if you're watching this, thank you. Um, I've I've known Dan from the Scorecast meetings in London, and I've known about the project, but I never felt prepared enough. And then I remember one day I saw a post on their page where they said they're releasing some last album or something, and I freaked out because I thought it's the last album ever. And I was like, no, but I wanted to work on that, and I never had the courage to ask for it. And in that moment, the fear of losing that opportunity actually pushed me to ask the question. But how it happened actually was through Marianne Fisher.
Mm.
Oh my gosh, I love her. She's such a great person. She was very supportive over the years, throughout the years, and I remember I talked to her at the last meeting before this happened, and I told her I love this project and it's something that I would love to try, but I don't feel confident enough and I don't think I have what it takes to do it. And she encouraged me to do it. She was like, Dan is great. You should just ask him, like you've got nothing to lose and you're good enough, trust me. I was like, no.
Mm.
So yeah, then I saw that post. I kept postponing this question for a few weeks, and then I saw this post and I was like, okay, that's it. It's now or never. And yeah, he was very kind and he replied right away, and he gave me a shot, even though, look, I didn't have a portfolio. Like I had nothing to prove, nothing to show. So he kind of took a leap of faith with me, and he gave me this one track to write, and I did, and it got approved right away, and
Awesome.
I was shocked. So yeah, he basically, in that moment, he just opened the door for me, and I never looked back. He was the man.
That's really awesome.
And thank you. And for Crime Sonics, I'm writing for Crime Sonics now. I met, funnily, it's also another Dan.
Yeah.
I met him on Facebook. They're from LA, so obviously I couldn't link with them. I met him on Facebook, and 1 year later, I mean, no, actually less than 1 year, I ended up writing for them. I remember he posted something on a group about composers. He was asking for composers and if somebody wants to write or something like that. And it's like, oh, crime music, dark stuff. Yes, hell yeah. And I replied in a comment, and then he messaged me, and yeah, I started writing a track for him. He really liked it, and now he offered me an artist release. So I'm writing a full album for them.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm so grateful.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't expect it.
Mm, fantastic. Well, that's really awesome.
I think you just have to, try,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
ask around.
Hmm. I think that's the important thing. Like, I mean, some people have asked, like me, how like I got into doing trailer music and stuff, and I remember I said to them, like, all I did was just I got a portfolio and I just asked people, like, and like sometimes it's just doing something as simple as that, just like saying, I really like what you do. I do this kind of stuff too. If you are taking on any new people, I'd be very interested, kind of thing. Just approaching them in a very kindly and just respectful manner, and like people have time, like they will listen to your stuff as well. Like it's not like before where you'd send CDs in and like they probably would never listen to them. Like now with social media and the internet, like we can listen to things a lot more instantaneously now, so people are listening like more than ever before, which is a really awesome thing. And like you touched upon like having like a good like community of other composers like there to support you. I think one of the best things, like especially like this is where I think things like Facebook and social media can be really used for like great stuff, is when it's used for stuff like that, just like supporting people and saying like, no, you can do it, like you should try, kind of thing. And like that's, I think, is a testament, like to show that because you had that support from other composers, you actually had the confidence to be able to say, okay, I'm going to try. And like because of that, it helped paid off and got you working and writing for those people, which is really awesome.
It's definitely about building relationships, I think. I
Yeah.
mean, at least that's what it's been like for me. I've built relationships before I even started writing, to be honest.
Mm.
I just went like always, I went backwards. So yeah, first I made the connections and then I started writing stuff.
Mm.
Um, but it's definitely about building relationships, meaningful relationships, and it's the same with collaborations, I think. For me, it's been like this. It's about liking who you're dealing with as well.
Mm.
Like there are times when I would actually reject a collaboration just because I don't feel like I vibe with that person.
Mm.
Like we don't have the same perspectives, we don't have the same. Yeah, so I
Mm.
think it's important to also appreciate their art and genuinely like what they're doing and feel inspired by them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I,
Of course, yeah. I think that's a very important thing to touch upon, because like especially if you have very different perspectives, then especially even if you try to kind of find like a common ground, like the result might not be as good as it could potentially be. So it's important to connect and be with people that you can gel with, not just on a musical level, but on a personal level as well. Because if you can connect on a personal level, that's half the battle, really. Like the rest is going to come very naturally. So yeah, that's a very interesting point. Like it's
and I
always
think
good.
it's also about respecting one
Yeah,
another because you can't be a jerk about writing something with someone and be like, no, my version is better, we should stick to it, and
mm,
things like that. You just can't go about
sure.
things like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think everybody has had like those instances where it's just like, you feel like it's not going anywhere. Like it's better to just come up front and just say like maybe this isn't going to work. Maybe we should try something else, kind of thing. So it's like you said, yeah, it's important to recognize that as well and have respect for each other, which is very important. Like Respect is probably the number one thing, like, to
Absolutely.
have for anybody, whether they're like, they've got like a big portfolio or not. Like, just having mutual respect for people is a very valuable asset to have, not just as a composer, but just as a human being as well, I believe, for sure. Excellent. So now I just wanted to take a little bit more of a detour, and obviously we touched upon like you're like an accomplished violinist. So I
Come
was
on. I wouldn't necessarily say that.
well,
But
to most people they would say that, but obviously what I wanted to touch upon is you had some of your violin like recordings or pieces used for the BBC series The Capture trailer, if I believe so. So,
no, it was actually in the TV series.
oh, in the TV series, great. So, how did that kind of opportunity present itself? Was that through someone you knew, or like if you can talk about it like a little bit?
Yes, sure. Um, Again, in the Scorecast community.
Right, okay.
Yay! Let's go, guys. Um, I think yes, it was a post looking. Yeah, the one of the composers was looking for a violinist, and Chris Nicolaides recommended me in the comments,
Mhm.
and I was available, so I was like, yeah, me, please pick me. And oh no, actually, wait, it's coming back to me. It happened on another project.
Okay.
When I was in London, it was for a live show
Hmm.
that they were filming, and yes, they wanted a performer. And I didn't get picked then.
Mhm.
I exchanged the details, emails, and everything with Ian Arbor, and yeah, the thing flopped for me. I
Okay.
didn't get picked. And then a few months later, I was in the gym and I just got a message from him, and it was like, look, I'm doing this. Would you be interested? Would you like to play well? I was like, yeah. So I just went straight home and started recording because he needed it right away.
Okay.
And then yeah, there was another episode he needed me for, and I did that as well.
Hmm.
And you never know where it's coming from.
Yeah, that's such a awesome story. So like when he needed those violin parts, like how did that kind of work? Did he send you like the scores and you just recorded them on like your mobile studio? How does that process work?
Uh, Mobile studio.
Like on your laptop, sorry.
Yeah, I have a home studio,
Hmm.
tiny one,
Hmm.
nothing fancy,
Hmm.
but yeah, just plugged everything in
Yep.
and started playing.
Great. Excellent. Excellent. And I
He
suppose.
sent me, he sent me, he didn't send me scores if I remember, like score sheet.
Hmm.
He sent me the MIDI files,
Right. Okay.
the BPM, the version without the violin, and the version with the violin line that I was supposed to play.
Okay.
And yeah, I think I did that by ear.
Okay.
So
Awesome. And I suppose when you finally saw like the TV show and you heard your
oh, yeah.
violin playing, that must have been quite a thrilling experience to hear that.
It seriously was, and this is another crazy thing because since I decided to get into media, I always thought if I'm going to appear on a film or show or game or anything, it's going to be as a composer, not as a violinist. Because, like
Mm.
I said, I gave up violin in high school, so it was very strange but exciting at the same time. So, see, this is the thing, like life has a weird way of working things out.
Mm.
It seems random at times, but it's just, yeah, you never know. And I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. It's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that is life. Life is just random. Like it's, there's no, you know, it's just things happen and they happen for a reason. So you just roll with
Exactly.
it for sure. Excellent. Oh, that's really awesome. So now moving on from that, I wanted to maybe talk to you a little bit just about like your solo stuff, and I mean specifically like the Heartbreak EP you did very recently. So if anybody wants to listen to this, by the way, it's on Spotify, so please do check it out. But yeah, what was the inspiration for like writing your own EP? Was it just obviously just something different you wanted to do? Where did the idea come from?
From another friend from Scorecast.
Okay, great.
Everybody should join Scorecast. By the way, guys, seriously, there are so many talented and inspiring people in that community. It's lovely to just exist in it, you know. Yes, the inspiration, heartbreak.
I see. Fair enough.
So I was going through a period like that. I think it was after a breakup, yes. And so the EP is actually about that.
I see.
It's very strong. The lyrics as well.
Yeah.
But it came like it didn't start it like this. You know, it started as a form of therapy. And it came from how's it called? An experiment I did with a friend who was helping me deal with my emotions and heartbreak. And he suggested one day I should record something. He wanted to make a cover song of Kate Bush, Running Up That Hill. And he sent me the background song, the backing track, and I really liked it. I was like, oh, this is something else, okay. It was like, you know, feel free to sing on it if you want. And I was like, really? Okay, cool. And so we released that. And then I sent him, I was like, look, I started writing some songs a while ago, and I think I had a sketch for the song Hurt, and it was orchestral actually. And I sent it to him, and then we decided let's try to make it like this, like the cover, because I think he was also in that period, you know, where he was feeling more electronica. So we turned the songs into that, and I loved it. And then I was like, okay, I had only 2 songs, and I did some research about EPs, and turned out I had to write at least another song. So I did just that in like a day. I wrote the lyrics for the last song, I'm Letting You Go. And that's when the magic happened for me emotionally, because in that moment I felt like I finally overcame what I was dealing with. And yeah, I decided to just release it. I was like, okay, you know, everything that I write is for publishers, so everything is not like, I'm not allowed to share it. And I haven't shared any music for probably 2 years before that. And people started asking, like, when are we releasing something? We want to hear something from you. I was like, oh, okay, well, here we go.
Nice, excellent. Well, and it's something that you can call yours as well. Like you said, you've not written it for anybody else. It's like it's your own design, and that it feels a lot more precious that way. I definitely agree. Like, so when I first listened to it, I thought, wow, like lyrics are very kind of like very like deep and very kind of like very emotional to hear. But I was very struck by how like the music, because you said it's almost very pretty much electronica. And when I first listened to it, like it did remind me a little bit of like kind of Nine Inch Nails, maybe a little bit Depeche Mode. So like, were those the kind of things like you were listening to at the time when you're writing it, or did it just, that was just naturally what came? Right.
Yeah, I think it came more from my childhood
Right.
when I used to listen to that kind of stuff. But no, it wasn't something I necessarily did on purpose. It just kind of came out like that.
Yeah, it just worked and you stuck with it.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I'm just random.
That's great. Excellent. Excellent. Very cool. And of course, they can find it on Spotify and on YouTube as
Yeah,
well. Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Great.
my channel as well.
Excellent. Very cool. Excellent. So I suppose getting back to writing again for like other kind of different mediums, like I think I read that you had written or like you recorded some violin parts for some video games as well. Like,
Yes, I
yeah.
also recorded and co-composed
Oh, okay.
for a few RPG games.
Fantastic. And how was that experience for you? Like going away from writing production music to writing for video games, how different was that for you?
Not very different, to be honest, because once again, I relied on the emotions
Hmm.
and the visuals that were supposed to accompany, or the story, because I got bits of background stories and yeah, that those kind of directions. So I love to have something like that because it helps me form an idea of what the music should sound like,
Hmm.
and then I just go with the flow and tune
Hmm.
into those emotions or visuals, and
Yeah.
that's pretty much it.
Okay, great.
But I never, to be honest, I know there are people who dream of scoring games, and that was never, again, it was never my dream.
Hmm.
But when I've been offered the opportunity, and because I love to experiment, I was like, here's another thing I never thought I'd do, but let's do it.
Yeah.
And yes, I've learned different things from that as well. And I
Hmm.
love this. I love learning
Hmm.
by doing things, being exposed to new processes and things I never thought of doing before.
Mm, okay, cool. Excellent. And you said you co-composed like on one of the projects. Like, how was that experience like co-composing with somebody else? Like, did you learn a lot from each other? How did you go about scoring like the game? Was he or she like, okay, you do this part and then I'll do this part? Like, how was that kind of relationship like?
Yes, so these projects, because there were three games
Hmm.
I worked on, they came from another scorecaster.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So I did this with my friend James Semple.
Hmm.
He was the main composer, and then he brought me on board. And no, each of us did their own thing. So we split the tracks. For one of them, I think he made me choose from a list of tracks, and I was like, okay, I think I could do something for this and that. For example, for one of them, I had to write an EDM track. So I was like, I can handle this. I'll do this. Like, great, because I don't know anything about EDM. I was like, it's okay, I've got it. So I did that, and oh, for another track, I had to write Oriental music, kind of like world music, and I love that as well. And it's something that I always wanted to do. So I was like, oh, here's another dream come true. So I picked that track. So yes, it was about tuning into our own set of skills, and bringing whatever we're better at. Like we never worked on the same tracks together. We just chose whatever we thought we're better at and then work separately and then put things together.
Yeah.
And I think this is great. I think this is how people should collaborate. I don't think it works when you both have the same set of skills, because maybe, your colleague will do things differently, but it's the same thing. And you might not approve of it or agree with it because you're doing it a different way. But, it's not about that. It's about the outcome. And nobody cares how you do it.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, I think it's about complementing each other. Like each of you should bring something that the other one doesn't have. And I think those are the best collaborations.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like having like people with different skill sets so that you can fill in like the blanks that the other person can't. Like that is like the result, I think, of a very healthy like relationship when you're co-composing stuff. Like, one person may be very good at orchestral stuff, the other person's really good at electronic stuff, but if you put them both together, then they can complement each other very well. So like having backgrounds and different styles mixed together and complement each other is definitely a good way of like co-composing anything. So I definitely agree with what you're saying on that for sure. But yeah, that's really awesome. So I suppose like just like from moving on from that now, like we touched upon like using social media, and obviously you said about like Scorecast and like meeting these group of other people like from all different backgrounds. Like collaborating and reaching out is obviously a very good way to like build relationships. Like in this kind of industry, like how important do you think it is to like make those connections? Because some people like to work, obviously I suppose some composers prefer just to like work by themselves, but it's quite evident from what you said that reaching out and making these connections is definitely very important. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, absolutely.
Mm.
I think directly or indirectly we are dependent on each other, and personally I don't think I would have gotten where I am today if it weren't for other people.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I'm very determined, yes, I have my skills, and yes, I will really want to do things, and but I wouldn't have done any of these things if it
Mm-hmm.
weren't for a few key people, to
Yeah.
maybe encourage me, or actually give me a chance to do it. So, and building relationships is very important as well, and connections, because you never know who might bring your next job,
Mm.
I mean, I got my jobs like that.
Yeah.
I I wasn't physically, because I'm from Romania, so,
Mm.
and most of my clients are abroad. I mean, actually all of my clients are abroad.
Mm.
So I didn't make those connections necessarily face to face. It
Yeah.
was years and years of networking online, and then after a few more years I got to meet them face to face. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, for me at least this is how it worked.
Mm.
And at first I had to contact them, but not because of or actually thanks to my connections and friendships, I get recommended.
Mm.
So I think it is important to build
Yeah.
those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always great to have those people that can like vouch for you as well. Like you said, like obviously having people say like he or she can do this, just give them a chance to prove themselves. And I think all it takes is just that one person to say, okay, I see something here, and to just like give you that chance. And it's just that one chance that it's just like then it's like everything else like starts to take off after that. And I think for people,
Yes, it's like a tree, it
yeah,
spreads its branches.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think it's also for people watching as well, it's very good advice to them if they're looking to maybe potentially get into this field, or like they want to know the ways of like contacting or talking to the right people as well. So it goes to show just like making friends, like not so much networking, making friends is more important.
Exactly. This
Mm.
is the most important thing, actually. I don't think it's I was thinking, and I remember I had some opportunities to connect with some really high level people,
Mm.
but like it was about personality for me, and
Mm.
I looked to build up relationships and friendships.
Mm.
And I remember I went to Berlin film festival last year, and I met up with a producer friend. I've never seen him before, but we knew each other from Facebook. And yeah, he was like, look, I'm an executive producer. I can't offer you jobs, like you don't have to hang out with me. I was like, no, I just hang out with you because I like you, as a person. It has nothing, like, I'm not here to hunt for
Right,
my
yeah.
next job, so, and yeah, we developed that relationship and we still keep in touch. And
Mm.
same with another producer from Canada. And you never know.
Mm.
And I think it's more important to talk to people that you can resonate with,
Mm. Mm.
and identify with. It's about, because, and be genuine about it.
Yeah,
If
definitely.
you like, don't try to have a plan of, oh, I'm going to that person because they can bring me these opportunities, and no, it's not how it works, and it's never
Exactly.
going to work out.
Yeah.
Like you have to be genuine and just build that relationship properly.
Absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree. And talking of like building relationships and stuff, I wanted to move on to like just talking about very briefly of like the Christopher Young program that you took part in. I think, was it last year, or is it very recently?
Yeah,
last year.
summer.
Last summer, yeah. So obviously going full circle back to talking about Christopher Young, and to finally getting to take part in like a program of his, like what was that experience like?
It was insane.
Yeah.
The whole thing, it happened so randomly, but I jumped on the opportunity because, to be honest, I was in a pretty bad place financially, and I couldn't really afford it, even with the scholarship, because the way I got there, it was through a scholarship. I was offered a scholarship, but even with the scholarship, I couldn't afford to go there, and I was like, I need to do this. I need to do it. I felt it in myself. I was like, this is my chance to finally, get into film scoring and, meet my hero. And yeah, so I went there eventually. And it was amazing. Oh my gosh, I encourage everyone to take that course. It was also about the people, not just the course in itself, because that was great, but it was also more connections that you can make, and friends. And I love that. The whole atmosphere there was amazing. So yeah, and Chris, I mean, you know what they say, you shouldn't meet your heroes because they might turn out to be jerks or something.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I was scared because of that. I was like, oh my gosh, I love the man. What if he turns out to be like, no, maybe I will regret it. But he was so amazing. He's such a kind person and so patient and so generous with his time. Because we also had a one-on-one session.
Wow, fantastic.
So we got to, it was amazing. So we got to sit down with him, and he listened to our music. And then I remember the day I had that session, he listened to my music the night before in his hotel. And yeah, he came in the morning at the course, and he was like, he just came and grabbed my hand and shook it. And he was like, I listened to your music last night. Amazing, congratulations, bravo. I was like, what? What just happened? Thank you very much. I'm very humbled. And then he went to drop his materials and prepare for the class. And then he came back to me. I was like, seriously, very, very good stuff. Bravo. And I was like, oh boy, this is not happening.
Yeah.
It was, I think, one of the highlights of my experience there.
Right, yeah.
And then in the evening, we had a one-on-one session. And the man he made notes for feedback for every track that he listened from me. And I remember he was like, so I read that you're a violinist, so I expected you to write something with a violin, which you did. It was the Torment track for Real Slow Motion.
Right.
And it was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. Very, very beautiful. And then I went to the second track, and I was like, is she going to write another? Is she going to show me another violin track? But you didn't. I was like, oh, okay, I like this. Good. And then I went to the third track, and it was sound design and dark and horror, and that's when I was like, okay, this girl has what it takes. And I'm like, she is a film composer.
Wow.
And I was like, what? Because I never studied film scoring, and to hear that, especially from someone like him, it was...
Yeah, for sure.
It was overwhelming.
I can imagine. Yeah, well, you got the seal of approval from your hero, so that I can imagine that must have been just such an overwhelming experience.
It was, and the most exciting part was the moment when he told me that he really loved how diverse I am.
Mm.
And I got back to him and I was like, you're actually the reason why I am so diverse, because you inspired me. I was inspired by you. I loved how diverse your music is, and that's what, you know, made me decide that this is the kind of composer I want to become. So to have that confirmation that, ooh, I am actually diverse and I can actually handle this, it was just wow.
Yeah.
I'll treasure those moments.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, as a film composer, you have to be very diverse musically, so that you have to work on many different styles. So if you have that diversity, then like he said, you know, she's got what it takes. She has so much range and so many different styles that, you know, there's nothing that she could not do then.
I don't know if it's necessary. I mean, yes, as a film composer, I think you should be able to write in many genres and styles, but I've also noticed particular composers being used in the same kind of genre all the time, you know, like writing and being very good at it, you know, but like having a niche and always getting hired for that kind of stuff because they're very good at it. But for me, yeah, it was more about the diversity I wanted. And I also think, you know, being more diverse allows you to have more opportunities, you know, and brings with it more work.
Yeah.
And I like to have options. I like to have things I can choose from.
Yeah.
So for me, it was necessary. I was like, no, I need to learn to be more diverse.
Sure. And throughout the duration of that program, was there anything specific that like new that you learned from it that like maybe surprised you, like, oh, I didn't know you could do that kind of thing? Was there anything new that you learned during your time there?
Yes. Absolutely, almost everything, because like I said, I didn't study film scoring, but it wasn't just about film scoring. The course was also about game scoring.
Right. Okay.
We also studied with Gary Shyman. Shyman or Shyman? How do you pronounce?
Oh, Gary Shyman. Yeah.
Shyman.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, we studied music for games with him and orchestration with Pete Anthony, and it was amazing. I mean, and they're also so inspiring, you know, and so passionate. So
for sure,
they love what they're doing, and it shows in the way they talk about it. And yes, I've learned, you know, from Gary about the process and like there were some softwares and programs you work through. Like I didn't know that because I didn't work like that for the RPG games, but for video games it's quite different.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. It was interesting to learn about that and hear what it's like. And
yeah, for sure. I mean, like, yeah, with a lot of game composers, they use programs like FMOD and Wise to help implement the music into video games. So that learning about that is always, I find, very fascinating. But yeah, I mean, obviously Gary Shyman, what a great person to learn under. I mean, BioShock is like one of my favorite all-time video games, and the music he did for that was really just
brilliant.
Amazing. Yeah, that's really awesome. Great. And so I think that's where we're gonna start to just like wrap up this podcast now. So I wanted to ask a few last questions for you, if I may, just to finish off the podcast. If you could name, maybe one's a bit difficult, if you could name maybe top 5 greatest achievements that you have achieved so far, like what would they be if you can think of any?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I think I've actually mentioned most of them here in the podcast. So yeah, the course with Christopher Young, it really changed my life, to be honest. And
great.
It made me take that leap of faith and really go for film scoring, because I got derailed with production music and games and everything else, you know, because I got into composition for films. but I ended up doing everything else except films. And right now, I'm working on my first feature film, so I'm super
Fantastic.
excited. Thank
Fantastic.
you. It was also very random again, but I'm very grateful. So I think this is my newest achievement and something that I've been dreaming for more than 10 years. And yeah, the capture gig.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Ian. Oh, yes. Well, that was also very random. Being picked one of the 5 finalists to perform the Hanging Tree song
Ah, yes, of
with
course.
James
Yeah.
Newton Howard.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that, but I think it was a pretty cool achievement to have, even though I didn't, end up being the one to perform.
Sure.
But it was amazing. It was a great experience. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's pretty much it. I don't think I
Yeah.
have 5 yet.
Okay, that's okay. That's fine. No, that's very cool. Awesome. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much again for the talk today. So, just to finish off finally, the last thing I wanted to ask that I like to ask people, like, what are your aspirations for the future? What would you like to achieve in the future? What would be like your dream project to be involved with, if you could choose one?
Uh, well, obviously scoring for a Hollywood movie.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, yes. So hopefully in a few years might happen. Who knows?
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. It's
Excellent.
just, yeah, that's my thing. I would like to take everything to the next level,
Sure, sure, sure.
and
Excellent.
hopefully I'll succeed.
Fantastic. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Music Junkie podcast today, Mirela. So thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for your time today. And thank you everyone for watching today. This has been another Music Junkie podcast. Please stay tuned for another episode very soon. Until then, please take care. Thank you, Mirela.
Bye. Thank you.